Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Manon Blom, and it is my pleasure to welcome you today to the Online Water Summit. This event is organized by the Center for Responsible Business here at Católica Lisbon. We are very excited to have you here with us on day one of this event, in which the current water problem is presented, as well as how water scarcity affects sourcing and production for the companies participating in our panels today. Kindly be informed about the following. You are muted during this webinar. If you would like to address questions during the panels to one of the speakers, you can ask them in the chat. You can also participate in the conversation on social media by using the hashtag #OnlineWaterSummit2020. And last but not least, we apologize for any technological issues, as most of us are broadcasting from our own homes. Thanks again so much for being here, and I would like to invite Nuno Moreira da Cruz, Executive Director of the Center for Responsible Business and Leadership, to open the event.
Hi, everybody. I'm delighted to open this Water Summit and welcome you all. My name is Nuno Moreira da Cruz. I am the Executive Director of the Center for Responsible Business and Leadership. The center was launched it's now a year, in June 2019, to be a catalyst for impact creation with a clear purpose, contributing for sustainability. But sustainability from the holistic point of view that includes economic, environment, social dimensions, to become part of the way we do things in our organizations. We have basically three axes of intervention: our students, which we call the leaders of tomorrow, the executives, which we call the leaders of today, and the research on these topics. Water is certainly one of the key pillars of environmental sustainability. And that was the reason why we have chosen this topic to organize our first summit. It addresses basically 5 SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. Number 4, quality of education. Number 6, clean water and sanitation. Number 9, industry, innovation and infrastructure. Number 12, responsible production and consumption. And number 17, partnerships. This SDG, number 17, is of particular importance, as you all know, on the topic of water, especially because without partnerships among all the relevant stakeholders, it will be impossible to deal with the challenge ahead of us. This summit is about water, but other topics will follow in the future. As most of you know, we were supposed to run this event to be held late April on a traditional physical environment, but the pandemic made us follow this online route. I have to say that this became a source of inspiration and creativity to our team. And we believe we were able to put together a great event, but of course, at the end of the day, you will be our judges. And that is especially due the quality of the event to the quality of the companies, their speakers, and the keynote speakers that generously accepted to be with us. To them all, a sincere obrigado. I had the privilege of having already glanced through all the presentations, and I assure you, you will not be wasting your time. We strongly believe that at the end of the event, the main takeaway for us all will be something like: the issue of water scarcity is globally a serious one, the corporate world is aware of the problem and already taking action. But having said this, the call to action remains paramount. So let's get started. And it's my privilege to introduce our first keynote speaker, which is Filipe Santos. Filipe, for most of you, you will know Filipe. Filipe is the Dean of Católica Lisbon. Is also the shared professor of the social entrepreneurship since 2016. He was a professor of entrepreneurship at INSEAD for 12 years, where he's still a visiting professor. At INSEAD, Filipe led ICE, which was the INSEAD Center for Entrepreneurship, and founded the INSEAD Social Entrepreneurship Initiative. He has a degree in economics and a master's in management and strategy. He holds a PhD from Stanford University. And in Portugal, Filipe was the co-founder of several social impact organizations, such as the IES Social Business School, Laboratório de Investimento Social, now MAIS, and Portugal Inovação Social. So, Filipe, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Nuno, and welcome everyone to the Digital Water Summit at Católica Lisbon. I first would like to thank the team of our Center for Responsible Business and Leadership, so well led by Nuno Moreira da Cruz, for organizing this summit that focuses on how we can preserve and manage the most valuable resource in the world, water. As an economist, I learned early on that economics is the science that studies the allocation and management of scarce resources to satisfy human needs. And ironically, the early economists from Plato to Adam Smith pondered on what was called the paradox of value related to water. And they wondered, being water so essential for human life, why was it so cheap compared to diamonds that are valuable but not very useful? I will quote the words of Adam Smith in The Wealth of Nations, saying that nothing is more useful than water, but it will purchase scarcely anything. Scarcely anything can be had in exchange for it. A diamond, on the contrary, has scarcely any use value, but a very great quantity of other goods may frequently be had in exchange for it. And this was a paradox for economics at the time. I think, of course, later in the 19th century, the economics profession solved this paradox of value with the realization that the market price of water is based on its marginal utility of the last unit consumed. And since water has been so plentiful in the world, the price of water is low or even zero. Water is a free resource. And for example, as we will learn tomorrow in the excellent study commissioned by the Gulbenkian Foundation on water, 75% of the water we use in Portugal is for farming purposes, but most farmers, 60%, don't pay the water they use. But I think still the paradox somewhat remains. Water is immensely valuable, but sometimes considered free. As the organizers of this summit acknowledge, the entire world runs on water. And I would dare to say human beings run on water as well. We can survive 20 days without food, but without water, in 5 days we die. And without water, we don't farm, we don't bath, we don't produce anything. So the question is, what happens if water becomes scarcer than it is today? Inevitably, its price will rise, and eventually it could become more expensive than diamonds. Well, the reality today is that water is already becoming scarcer. In some countries, the scarcity of water is leading to population migrations, which often then leads to wars between communities and regions. Yes, people are already fighting wars for water. It's called water conflicts. In the Middle East, for example, 5% of the global population needs to survive in a region that has only 1% of the global fresh water available. So that's globally. But in Portugal, what's the situation? And with global warming accelerating and leading to the rapid desertification of the south of Portugal, water will become scarce. Not in 50 years, but this decade. By 2030, we'll have a severe water shortage in Algarve and Alentejo. This will affect everything: tourism, farming, industry, and well-being of our populations. So the time to act is now. The time to strategically manage water and use it sustainably, to treasure it as the precious resource that it is now, not in 2030. Católica Lisbon wants to be at the center of knowledge development and of shaping partnerships and strategies for sustainable development. And there is a reason we started this first summit with the theme of water. The world runs on water. Water is unevenly distributed and is becoming scarcer. The time to act is now, and I would like this summit to be a call to action to each one of us and to our organizations. The summit organizers have curated a wonderful program to allow us to think strategically about how best to use and manage the valuable and scarce resource of water. I hope that from this summit, there will be powerful insights and the mobilization of minds and resources to tackle the issue of water strategically and with purpose. So I wish you all a vibrant knowledge sharing, powerful learnings among this community, and also impactful outcomes, because committed and purposeful action is needed. So thank you all for joining us for this 2 days event, these 2 afternoons of discussion and sharing around water. And it is my great honor now to introduce the opening speaker of our summit, João Pedro Matos Fernandes, the Minister of Environment and Climate Action of Portugal. Allow me to say a few words of introduction. João Pedro is a civil engineer from the University of Porto with a master's in transport from IST and has a long career with strong contributions in the public and private sector, being Minister of the Environment since 2015, and I would dare to say a champion for a more committed and coherent sustainability agenda for Portugal and Europe. He has worked in public policy advising since 1990 to 2005, initially in the north of Portugal and then at national level. He also has since 2005 had leadership roles in the ports industry, in the board of Douro and Leixões Port Authority, chairman of Viana do Castelo Port, and president of the Portuguese Ports Authorities Association, as well as manager of the Nacala Port in Mozambique. He's also a professor, was also a professor in Instituto Superior Técnico and in Instituto Superior de Transportes, lecturing in several universities in the areas of transportation and infrastructure. I think very relevant to our discussions today, in 2014 and 15, before his appointment as Minister of the Environment, he was President of Waters of Porto, Águas do Porto, which means he knows deeply about the value of water and the importance of the good management of this valuable resource. Your Excellency, it's an honor to have you with us today to open our summit. So the digital stage is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, you are in mute. You are still in mute.
Now it's working. Okay. Okay. So thank you so much for the invitation and also for this so nice presentation of myself. I believe that Portugal can be really a good example when we talk both of the water resources and the water services. Portugal, as you all know, it's not exactly a big country, but it's completely different, the basic situation in the north or in the south of the country. When you talk about the water scarcity, it's true. It is not a drought for a year or two. Below Rio Tejo, the River Tajo, we do have a scarcity problem, which is already structural. And we don't feel the same. I can almost say that we feel almost the opposite thing in the north of the country. But of course, you can't storage water as you can storage any other good. We have to manage the water through a water basin, and you should only put water from one basin to another one in very specific conditions. So each water basin should be autosufficient. So we do have a big challenge in Portugal. But at the same time, when we talk about water services, we invest about 11 billion euros in the last 20 years, and we have a complete sheet of what happens in the near past. I'm from Porto, and I was already involved, and it was impossible to drink tap water. So it doesn't happen a long time ago. Now you can drink tap water in 99% of the Portuguese taps. If they are in a big city or in a small village, we come from 50% of water safety to 99% in less than 20 years. I think that you all know what's the blue flag in a beach, which means the water quality on the beaches. And 20 years ago, we have no more than 65 beaches with a blue flag, and now you have 362. So almost all the beaches are have a blue flag, which means that we've invested a lot, and we were very successful when we talk about the treatment of the sewage. So yes, we have good quality in infrastructures. Yes, we have scarcity problems in the south of the country. But at the same time that we invest a lot in infrastructures and also in managing the assets that we have, it's really, it's very obviously that we don't have only the diversity of a north with lots of rain and the south with just a few water. We also have big metropolitan areas like Porto and Lisbon with no managing problems, but we have many small systems all around the country. The responsibility of the water services is on the municipalities, and we have municipalities with no more than 5,000 inhabitants. So we do have to improve a lot when we talk about the managing systems, and we do have to aggregate those systems, because it's impossible to have efficient services if you have systems with less than 80,000 inhabitants. It's impossible to do it. Or, well, it's always possible, but you have to pay a lot. So our policy is really to invest and to give money coming from the EU to those systems who are now aggregating themselves. When we say that in Portugal we lose an average of 30% of the water that we treat, we lose it through the grids. It's not exactly that we lose it through the grid. There are some losses which are physical, that's true, but most of them are commercial losses. So we have to manage much better, and we have to put everybody paying the water. We still have problems there, and it's very obvious that we can have to have a complete sustainable, a complete equilibrium in the accountability, the financial accountability of the managers of the water system. If you don't have that equilibrium between what you pay and what you and the costs that you have, it's obviously that you'll have environmental problems in the near future. It doesn't mean that you have to have all the money from tariffs, but it really means that you have to have a perfect accountability. And if the money doesn't come from tariffs, it has to come from somewhere. And it's very obvious that the managers of the systems have to put the money which is invisible. This is what we are doing, and I do believe that in a few years we can have a complete equilibrium in the water systems on the what we call the urban cycle for water. But at the same time, we have a new challenge, which means the rainwater and the nets, the grids, through whom the rainwater comes. With the climate change, it's really obvious that the water supply grids and the sewage supply grids have to be they are no more important than the other grids of the rain who can conduct the water coming from rain. They are really important. Of course, they are less expensive to manage. You don't have to treat nothing at the beginning as the water grid, and you don't have to treat nothing at the end like the sewage grids. But they have to be integrated, and when we talk about the integration of the cycle of water of urban water in Portugal, we always have to consider also this third grid, which is really important, mainly when we talk about climate change. Those who live in Lisbon know very well what are the floods that happen coming from nowhere, and why? Because people in the past don't look to this kind of grids and pipes with the same importance that we look to the others. So the biggest two challenges in Portugal in the water services are, of course, the first one trying to aggregate, to have conditions, to have a financial equilibrium in the managers, and with that to have a very good environmental performance. And at the same time, we have to understand that it's impossible to live with small systems. We have to aggregate them to be sure that we have enough capacity to use water in most efficient way. If I go, and I conclude with it, if I go back to the water resources, the rivers and the small rivers, the word efficiency is also important. And yes, maybe we lack some infrastructure. There are some few dams, small dams that are supposed to be built, but mainly we have to use less water. It's very obvious that we can't produce water, or I would say that the only water that we can produce is try to use recycled water who come from sewage treatment plants. We will have a big investment, maybe in the south of the country. We will have to water the golf greens with this kind of water. We will have to water the permanent cultures in agriculture, to wash the streets, to water the gardens. It has to be with recycled water. It's not an easy issue from the perspective of people, from the perspective of technicians, and even from the perspective of politicians. We approved in no more than 2 or 3 months ago a new directive in the European Union, and it's one of the very few directives to have an opt-out condition, which means that there are some countries, they are not forced to translate this directive to their own law, to their national law. Why? Because the countries in the north, they are completely against it. But okay, we went with this opt-out condition, and it's really important that we can do it. At the same time, we all have to consider or to understand that the 3 main rivers in Portugal, they all come from Spain. And when we talk about the tensions that will feel in Portugal in managing water, those tensions are much more important and strong in Spain. We have much more water for inhabitants rather than our Spanish neighbors, and water comes from there. So it's really important that we can manage those rivers together. We don't have problems at Rio Douro in the north of the country. We almost don't have problems in Guadiana because the big reservoir is in our country, which is Alqueva, but we have problems at River Tejo. And I think that it's impossible to combat those problems without having a new dam in the Portuguese territory, not in the river, but in a very important effluent as close to Spain as possible. But we do, but I believe that maybe it's the only example of a big dam in Portugal for the next 20 or 25 years. What I mean is, we do have to be much more efficient, and agriculture is key in this discussion. The agricultural sector believes that everything that comes from land are environmental things. That water is a good provided by God, so they deserve to use it, and it's not true. So we have to choose which are the cultures that are going to put in land, and we do have to adapt our agriculture to the quantity of water that we have in the country. Adaptation is one of the 2 main verbs coming from Paris Agreement. One is mitigation, reduce emissions, and the other is adaptation, adapt our country, our territory to the new climate conditions. And when we talk about adaptation, we have to have no doubt that it's us and our activities that have to adapt ourselves to the quantity of water and not the other thing. It's impossible to look at it from a different point of view. And this is not an easy issue. When we look to the new strategy coming from the European Union, from farm to fork to agriculture, we do feel very happy. When we suffer from the COVID and we understand that we have to have shorter logistic chains from production through distribution to the consumption, we have to understand that we can't depend on monocultural and intensive cultural in the land, in the fields, but we do have to depend in a completely different thing, which means that the polyculture is essential, and with it we can have a better use of water. So that's why I believe that Portugal is a good example. We have the problems, we have many of the solutions, we proved many of the solutions in the near past, and we will still do it. We still have big challenges in managing the urban systems, and we have an even bigger challenge in trying to be clear that if water is basic, but you can't fabric water, you can produce water, so we can't leave using more water than we have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I think it was an excellent overview of the achievements and also the challenges for water management in Portugal. And I think it will help frame our discussions in the next 2 days. So thank you much for sharing those insights and issues with us. I know that you have a very busy agenda, but of course, if you'd like, you are very welcome to continue with us and stay for our keynote speaker, which will be Catarina de Albuquerque, the CEO of UN Sanitation and Water for All. And we will now continue with the program, and I'll pass to our moderator, Manon Bloom, to introduce the next speaker. Thank you very much, Mr. Minister.
Yes, thank you. Thank you both to the Minister and Felipe. I would now like to ask my co-host, Vera Herenia Colasso, Assistant Professor at Católica Lisbon, to introduce our next keynote speaker.
Thank you, Manon. So welcome, everyone. Thank you for being with us today and for having registered to the Water Summit. It is my great pleasure to introduce you to our next keynote speaker, Catarina de Albuquerque, who is a global leader on the issues of sanitation and water for all. Catarina de Albuquerque is the CEO of SWA, Sanitation and Water for All, and is based at the UN headquarters in New York City. The SWA is a global partnership that links the UN, governments, donors, civil society, and multilateral organizations to work together and take action to achieve universal access to clean drinking water and adequate sanitation. Catarina has an impressive resume. Prior joining the SWA, Catarina de Albuquerque was the first UN Special Rapporteur on the right to safe drinking water and sanitation, and has an outstanding work record in the area of human rights. She was awarded the Human Rights Golden Medal by the Portuguese Parliament in 2009, and was also honored by the Portuguese President of the Republic with the Order of Merit the same year. She holds a law degree from the Law Faculty of the University of Lisbon and a master's degree in international relations and law from the Graduate Institute of Geneva. Catarina, thank you so much. We are so grateful for your time and for sharing your knowledge here at the summit. The floor is yours. Let me unmute you.
I am unmuted.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Professor Colasso, dear Vera, and thank you for Católica for the invitation to address you today. It was a pleasure to listen to His Excellency the Minister, as always, and also to the previous speakers, and learn a little bit about macroeconomics, which is not really my field of expertise, so it's always good to hear. Good. So I am sorry. I'm trying to move something here on my computer, but I'm evidently not very gifted. I'm sorry. I'm trying to. Okay. I'm So I'm having a problem, a technical problem. After all these months of COVID, I still don't manage to do this right. Sorry, give me just one more second. I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, this had never happened to me before. Good, okay. So, as I told you, as Professor Kulas was telling you, I am working for a global partnership in the area of water sanitation and hygiene, and we bring together the UN with other stakeholders. And this idea of creating global partnerships, which is very much linked to the idea behind SDG 17, Goal 17 on partnerships, it was an idea by the previous UN Secretary General, Kofi Annan, who realized that we would never reach the former Millennium Development Goals if we would task just governments with delivering on global development. It would only be through partnerships that we could have chances to reach the Millennium Development Goals then, and now the SDGs. And we do think that when we work together, we become catalysts for change. I've been now hearing in New York people talking about partnership as the new leadership. And even though sometimes I do get frustrated that things take a little bit more time because we work in partnership and you have to listen to the different partners and take their views into account, it's also true that if you want to go fast, you go alone, but if you want to go far, you should go together. And I think that we chose the second option. So nowadays, we have these horrible numbers of over 2 billion people around the world without safely managed drinking water, over 4 billion without access to safe sanitation, and importantly, now at the time of COVID, 3 billion people who cannot wash their hands with water and soap, as we all who are in this conference have been doing throughout our lives and have intensified over the last 3 months. And we also know, according to UN data, that by 2025, half of the world's population will be living in water-stressed areas. So it is nowadays undeniable that water scarcity will indeed be a defining issue of this century. Taking a quick step back in time, almost 10 years ago, the UN General Assembly explicitly recognized the human right to water and sanitation and acknowledged that it was essential for the realization of all human rights. And very often, I also teach at Católica, but in the law school, and the students ask me, but why did it take so long? Why did it take so long to recognize something as evident as water and human rights? And the Adam Smith story made me think, and it made me think because water seems too obvious and too cheap and too evident and too abundant. I was reading the travaux préparatoires of the negotiations of the UN Declaration on Human Rights, of the two international covenants on human rights from 1966. There is, maybe you can move a bit backwards on the slides. This is not where I am right at the beginning. And what is shocking is that the word water was not pronounced once in almost 20 years of negotiations of human rights treaties. And when the students ask me why, of course, I was not there, I don't know. For the negotiators, who were privileged diplomats, right, who very probably even belonged to the noble, they were nobles, they lived in well-off areas, it did not even cross their minds to refer to water because it was cheap and obvious. Of course, we now know that things have changed. We also know that water and sanitation and hygiene are connected and central to every aspect of life, and water scarcity and lack of access do represent a threat to populations worldwide. Now, please, slide 4. Is this slide 4? Today, the water crisis has become even more prominent in the context of COVID, and it is now even more urgent than ever to find effective and long-lasting solutions. And even though in the news we see a lot and read a lot about personal protective equipments and about including the masks and the ventilators, etc., water sanitation and hygiene are the first line of defense against COVID, and having good wash will also spare health systems. With hand washing at the core of the fight against the coronavirus, water really determines who is more vulnerable and who is less. In the context of COVID, inequalities in access to water sanitation and hygiene services have become even more apparent and have an even greater impact on those farthest left behind, the most marginalized, those with lower incomes, with disabilities, with chronic diseases, women and girls, those living in slums, in informal settlements, those who are homeless, as well as refugees, are at a greater risk as they don't have access to this first line of defense. The other day, Matt Damon, who is the president of water.org, who was invited to address you tomorrow, not Matt Damon, but water.org, he said that water is PPE. It's a personal protective equipment. And these people who are left behind, and we have seen this in Portugal, in the big Lisbon area, people living in poorer neighborhoods, people even belonging to minorities, etc., have been having difficulties in protecting themselves from COVID. So governments, institutions, and also businesses are now required to demonstrate a greater level of adaptability, resilience, and focus on innovation. And of course, as Churchill said, we should never waste a good crisis. And this might be another good occasion for us to reevaluate and change and make sure that we adapt in order to ensure continuity and sustaining growth when we work with water, when we use water also in our businesses. So, of course, water is an economically strategic resource underpinning many activities, many business activities, and water risks cut across all industry sectors. That's why so many of you are here. Water shortages can limit production, they can disrupt supply chains, they can lead to conflict with other water users, and they can harm corporate reputations. In the current COVID context, lack of access to wash among the most vulnerable will make it more difficult to stop the spread of the virus and to start with economic recovery. And we are seeing this, right? And as Antonio Guterres, the UN Secretary General, said, a society's overall health depends on the health of its poorest people. So economic recovery will not be possible. Building back or building forward better will not be possible if we don't make sure that everyone has access to water, sanitation, and hygiene. Slide 5, please. So safeguarding water and ensuring its availability in sufficient quantity and quality is of vital interest to businesses, to people. And the repercussions of lack of access to water and sanitation, to water in particular, have become even more palpable. Lack of access is intrinsically related to economic growth, and we know that for example, now in the context of this pandemic, if populations are subject to extended lockdowns and restrictions, many sectors of the economy will become unavoidably affected, including the water providers, Slide 6, water scarcity and sustainability. Let me see if this is the exactly good. So there are two essential areas that I would like to draw your attention to: equality and sustainability. Sustainability, we have talked about it, previous speakers have talked about it today, is an increasingly difficult challenge. Water resources are being overused, they are being polluted, and obviously this has all been compounded by the impact of climate change. Changing weather patterns, making rainfall less predictable and frequently more extreme. But countries and also businesses will have to work much harder to ensure that the resources, the water resources, are protected and used adequately and equitably. Climate change and water scarcity cannot and should not be forgotten at times of emergency. Political leaders as well as business leaders must do more to raise awareness around the fact that good hygiene practices are indispensable, but this should not imply wasting water resources, and climate change needs to remain obviously a top priority. One of the things that I've been hearing, for example, from political leaders in Latin America, is that the amount of water consumption has increased dramatically in Latin America, in certain countries even by 30%, which does not correspond to or which is not justified by the needs, the increased needs of hygiene. So there might have been something that got lost in translation. And when talking with the Inter-American Development Bank some days ago, they were telling me that all of this advocacy around increased hygiene should have been accompanied with advocacy on also the need to save water. We cannot forget about the one when focusing on the other. So businesses, or rather responsible businesses, have a responsibility to make sure that they abide by the rules of the game, that their use of water and their impact on water safeguards those two aspects. Water scarcity affects every continent, and water use has been growing globally at more than twice the rate of population increase in the last century, and an increasing number of regions are reaching the limits at which water services can be sustainably delivered. Next slide, please. Nowadays, we have the same quantity of surface water available than we had at the time the planet was formed. But despite a much higher water usage, water is not treated as a precious resource today. We are using instead more and more water as the result of agriculture and industrialization. Next slide, please. People not only consume water when they cook, when they clean, when they drink, when they bath, we do much more with it. And this was demonstrated with the concept of virtual water, which measures the amount of water used to produce different goods, including food. A cup of water, as you can see, needs 140 liters to be produced. A kilo of meat, 10,000 liters. So our daily menu, in our daily menu, a consumer uses between 2,000 and 5,000 liters of virtual water. Also, 2,000 liters of water are needed to make a t-shirt, and 11,000 liters of water to make jeans. So climate change and bioenergy demands are also expected to amplify the already complex relationship between world development and water demand. And on a large scale, globalization and how to extend the benefits of industrialization to the entire world equitably and without unsustainable impacts on water and on other natural resources is obviously a key issue. So water scarcity is indeed everyone's problem. Next slide, please. So what are the economic and business considerations of the water challenges? If this is everyone's business, then or anyone's problem, then it's this community's problem. So what can the business community do about it? So let me focus on some ideas, 3 ideas. First idea is how to do more with less. What, right? So water is a resource under increased stress. I've said it already several times. The World Economic Forum has mentioned it as one of the greatest risks to business continuity. And it has also been identified as the #1 global risk to society over the next 10 years, also by the World Economic Forum. By 2030, our population is expected to have reached 9 billion. By then, 4 billion are expected to live in high water stressed areas, and global fresh water demand will exceed supply by more than 40% if the world continues to follow business as usual practices, again, according to the World Economic Forum. So for water intensive business sectors, such as the water utilities, but the agriculture, as was already mentioned, the energy, extractive industries, chemicals, textile industries, this represents a major resource risk in terms of continued supply, competitiveness, and resilience, especially in the current context. Many companies are struggling to find the water they need to run their businesses. Scarcity is raising prices and increasing the level of regulation and competition among stakeholders for access to water. To continue operating, companies in most sectors must learn how to do more with less. Achieving this goal is an opportunity as well as a necessity. The water crisis presents businesses with the opportunity to develop products and services that can increase water productivity. In the agricultural sector that was already mentioned, there are opportunities for companies that can develop new technologies for irrigation and that would allow farmers to use less water to grow their crops. I visited Jordan, which is one of the first, the second, the third most water scarce country in the world, and their revenues rely a lot on agriculture and on the crops that they grow in the Jordan River Valley, and they invest a lot in producing crops that are very water intense. So the government started working with the farmers in order for them to transition to crops that are less water intense. And another thing could also be, and it's one of the recommendations when I visited Jordan as a UN Special Rapporteur, was that the subsidies for the water that is used to agriculture should also be revised, because there were simply no incentives in the country for farmers to save water and to change crops. So new approaches are also needed for oil companies, mines, utilities, beverage companies, etc., to use water more efficiently. Wastewater management, and already when you look at the expression of wastewater, it implies that we are talking about waste, about garbage, about something that we can dispose of, and it already also conveys a wrong perception of what wastewater should be, because wastewater creates opportunities to introduce new solutions, devices to collect wastewater and reuse them for flushing toilets, technology for collecting and reusing the condensation from air conditioning systems, more water efficient appliances, ultraviolet disinfection technology, etc., just to name some. Next slide. The second idea is be part of the solution and, of course, embrace human rights. Companies must engage more actively in shaping the regulations that will define the market. Standing on the sidelines is no longer an option. So nearly every sector is already being affected. The big responsibility on businesses to respect the human rights to water and sanitation, and also human rights, has been put more and more in the forefront. The United Nations has approved a framework which is called Protect, Respect and Remedy, that sets an authoritative global standard for preventing and addressing the risk of adverse human rights impacts linked to business activities. And the framework is based on 3 pillars, 2 of them a bit more addressed at states, the state's duty to protect against human rights abuses by businesses, but then the corporate responsibility to respect human rights and the greater access by victims to effective remedies. Focusing on the second pillar, the corporate responsibility to respect human rights, is key. And there is an expectation from the world community for businesses to respect the rights, which means to act with due diligence to avoid infringing of the rights of others and to address adverse impacts that occur. And to finalize, this brings us to the third idea: multi-stakeholder approaches, partnerships, and community engagement. In the partnership that I'm currently heading, that I talked about at the beginning, what we advocate for is government-led multi-stakeholder processes, including businesses, of course. So policy-making, legislation, and even planning processes need to consider and bring on board inputs from businesses, not just their opinions and on how it would affect them, but also on how they can potentially help in implementing, in designing, but also implementing policies and plans. But not just businesses, of course, also civil society, UN agencies, international finance institutions, user associations. So if you are part of that process, you can get to understand more and know more and acknowledge this is power. And this goes both ways, because there is also a need for increased transparency and disclosure requirements in certain countries that are underscoring the need for companies to better manage their resources. This has been highlighted, for example, by the UN Global Compact CEO Water Mandate, which recognizes the need for companies to engage on water issues through their direct operations, supply chains, watershed management, public policy advocacy, community engagement, and also actions aimed at transparency. Responding to this challenge not only addresses the broad concern of water scarcity, it also addresses the fundamental ability for businesses to be able to continue operating. The increasing consciousness among public and private organizations towards a better and more sustainable future that are in line with the SDGs is leading a change for good. Along with the need for differentiation, market players are increasingly allocating part of their budget to the development of socially responsible and sustainable practices. It's essential to engage with the key stakeholders in every community where a company operates in a meaningful way, and not just tick a box. Water issues are, by definition, multi-stakeholder issues, and it is therefore useful to look at how advanced companies are in their stakeholder approaches to manage water issues and how decision makers can remain inclusive despite the diversity of actors at play. Without wanting to make much advertisement, let me mention, for example, some of the good practices from some of our partners. For example, in the private sector. Unilever, for example, believes firmly that it is not possible to achieve long-term business success in a world which contains poverty, hunger, and climate change. And hence, it seeks to address issues such as nutrition, sanitation, hygiene, and climate change, and has recognized that companies have now the opportunity to embrace the SDGs as a driver of societal change and business growth. So a growing number of private sector organizations are taking this approach and looking at new ways of doing business. Water providers or utilities such as Veolia and Suez have taken extraordinary measures to ensure service continuity during the COVID pandemic, all while taking additional precautions to protect the health and safety of customers and employees. Both companies have cancelled all service interruptions during the pandemic, recognizing the importance now more than ever of access to proper water, sanitation, and hygiene. I had more examples, but I don't want to take much more time. And let's move to the last slide, please, with the conclusions. So inescapably, water will become more and more a strategic factor for businesses. Businesses must have a seat at the table along with other key stakeholders. They must be part of the solution, but they also have responsibilities. Every crisis presents an opportunity for reevaluation and change, and businesses such as governments and other stakeholders will need to do that. They will also need to adapt and innovate to resolve the water crisis and achieve the SDGs. And now is more than ever the time to stop business as usual. Thank you so much, and I hope that I didn't talk for too long.
Thank you. It was really, really nice, Catarina. Thank you so much for your enlightening presentation. It is amazing to see that there is lots of room for improvement from the business side, from the consumer side. But, you know, thinking about the reality that the world is currently living due to COVID, and talking about water scarcity and the lack of access to safe water to wash hands, in developing countries, which is not helping to stop the spread of the virus. Could you please elaborate a little bit on what organizations such as the SWA and maybe the WHO are doing to overcome these limitations of people not being able to wash their hands due to the water scarcity? Hold on, I have to.
No, it's okay, it's okay. I think, no, it's okay. I was trying to. I think that one of the problems that we have been seeing with governments has been the lack of political prioritization of water. Maybe it comes all to the Adam Smith story. It's cheap, we don't take it seriously. And it's obvious. And one of the things that we have been seeing, and I've been talking with ministers of water and sanitation all over the world, what they tell me is that when at the national level there are COVID committees being put in place to figure out what type of measures should be prioritized to address the crisis, they don't sit at the table. The WASH ministers don't sit at the table. When the finance minister, together with the prime minister or the president, decide on getting loans or grants from international finance institutions, what the World Bank is telling me, what the Inter-American Bank is telling me, what the African Development Bank is telling me is that they don't ask for money for WASH, because they don't talk with the water ministers. They ask money for ventilators and hospitals, etc., which I'm not saying is not important, but they are not taking these aspects of WASH in the context of COVID, but also pre-COVID into account. What I always hear from the World Bank is, we respond to our clients, to the demands of our clients. I do think that we need much more political visibility, political engagement at the highest levels on water, sanitation, and hygiene. Now I will do a bit of advertisement. From SWA's side, we organized a leaders' call to action that was signed by 85 global leaders, several heads of state and government, unfortunately not the Portuguese one, but the Spanish one, and from several other continents, heads of several UN agencies, also of business, Veolia, Suez, Unilever from the private sector, but also academic institutions, etc. And we advertised it in the New York Times, in the Economist, in the Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung, etc., in order to raise the profile of water, in order to reach the decision makers. So this is one bit. At the level of UN institutions, what we have been seeing is that UN institutions and it's UNICEF that has the lead on water among the UN family, is devoting much more resources and investments in hand washing and in water sanitation and hygiene. When I talk with bilateral donors, I hear that some, of course, are going to cut down on ODA because they have less money and the budgets are being cut. But other donors tell us that they will not cut the amount that they are giving to water and sanitation. So what I see is we need more increased political visibility from national leaders, but also from other leaders, business leaders, UN leaders, etc. Just to give you another small example,
we have to close.
Sorry?
we have to close. We are about to close.
Then I'll stop. It's okay.
No, go ahead. You have to finish.
So when we published the call to action, the head of the International Labour Organization immediately said, I want to sign. He signed, and he made a video with his phone speaking about the importance of water if we want to recover the economy, if we want to build forward better. I don't like to say back better because what we had back was not good enough. So in order to build forward better, that we cannot, so the businesses, the workplaces, etc., need to have access to water, to sanitation, to toilets, etc. So all of these awareness raising campaigns, sensitization, the change of perspective needs to come, and I think this crisis can be the opportunity for us to put WASH at the forefront. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. The appeal stays, and I hope our audience, they will, and I'm sure, retain the message. Thank you very much, Catarina de Albuquerque from SWA. Thank you very much. And now I will turn to Manon so that Manon can introduce our poll, actually. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Vera, and thank you, Catarina. I had the privilege one time before to attend one of your talks, and it always leaves me very enthusiastic, and I'm getting so much energy from your story and the way you address the attendees. So thank you very much. Indeed, we have prepared a poll during the events between the speakers and the panel. So here I would like to start the first poll that we have prepared. Well, over half of the participants did vote. I'm going to share the results now with you. Well, it's very obvious that most of the attendees are considering the issue of water scarcity globally a very major problem. It's obviously very considered to be very important to address this issue. And with regards to how you're personally contributing, it's very dispersed, as you can see, being 5 the most given answer. Thank you so much for attending, Katrina. I'm sure the audience really liked your talk as well. A lot of questions came in, but unfortunately, you have to move forward. Thanks again. I would now like to continue to the first panel, track 1, water in the value chain regarding sourcing and production. This panel will be moderated by my colleague, Francisco Barayos. Francisco, the floor is all yours.
Hello, just trying to take these out of front of me, otherwise I won't be able to share with you. Sorry. So hello everyone, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, based on where you're joining us from. We sincerely appreciate your presence for today's presentation on the Water Summit Track 1, Water in the Value Chain, Sourcing and Production. My name is João Francisco Barreiros, and it's my great pleasure to moderate today's sessions, which will focus on how leading companies in the fast-moving consuming goods, agriculture and pharmaceutical sectors are growing aware of the business risks associated with water scarcity along their value chain, particularly in the sourcing and production phases. And now I would like to introduce you our first speaker, Dr. José Roquete, Chairman of Esporão, one of the leading wine and extra virgin oil companies in Portugal, which products are sold in more than 50 countries worldwide. Esporão was also a pioneer in Portugal with its wine tourism, which operates since 1997, and which has been awarded already several well-known prizes. To be very honest, it's very hard, I think that very hard to introduce Dr. José Roquette. I think that he hardly needs to be introduced, particularly to those who support Sporting of Portugal Football Club, as it was under his presidency in 2000 that after 18 years of feast, Sporting was once again champion. Nevertheless, I would just mention that Dr. José Roquette is an economist who has begun his preeminent career in the late 1950s in the financial sector, having held several executive board seats in several companies and worked in different countries, later becoming one of the founders and shareholders of the Espírito Santo Group, a relationship he maintained until the end of the 1980s. In fact, it was some years earlier, in 1973, that Dr. José Roquette and Joaquim Bandeira founded Finagra, the company that acquired Herdado Esperão, which today is entirely owned by Dr. José Roquette, and which from the very beginning assumed a growth strategy geared towards sustainability, a definitely innovative way of doing business by Portuguese industry leaders in the 1980s. José Roquette was recognized in 2018 Drink Business Green Awards with a Lifetime Achievement Award. This distinction recognizes his work at Esperão throughout more than 4 decades, namely for building a culture of environmental responsibility that resulted in implementation of sustainable and innovative agricultural practices and raising awareness on environmental issues. So with this, and I assure you it's a very brief summary, it's a pleasure to hand out the presentation to Dr. José Roquette.
Is the audio okay?
Yes.
Okay. So good afternoon or good morning, wherever you are. Thanks for the invitation to the Water Summit. I accepted because I think that I have something to say about the water issue, and because I am in the front of the fight, if I may say so. Where I am right now, I can see the Alquiva Lake and feel all the contingency and problems related with it. Esperão State was bought in 1973, and but the borders go back to 1276. So Esperão has the Esperão State has the same borders since 1276. Of course, until 50 years ago, nothing happened around here. Our business model when we started the company was trying to go from the and the business model was trying to go from land, meaning vineyards and olive trees, to the market. And from the very beginning, we had in mind that the sustainability was and the good relation with nature was something really important. And basically, the most I think concrete way to define what our relationship with nature is the fact that almost all our vineyards, all of the vineyards in Alentejo and the other ones in Douro and also in Minho, they are being organic certified. So being organic certified means that we cannot use aggressive chemicals or any kind of herbicides. This is definitely the way to go in to produce better and more healthy wines and olive oils, and our experience is clearly on this way. It's quite a remarkable thing that the certified organic vineyards and olive trees of Esperão right now are more than 50% of all the organic and organic certified vineyards in Portugal. This is basically a result because I don't say that the other agriculture or the other people living with vineyards, which are something of many thousands, they don't care about. But I think that the major factor that keep things as they were 100 years or 150 years ago was basically a weak financial support, and all the basic costs you have to run into when you decided to move from traditional culture into organic certified culture. I sincerely believe that the way is on this direction, and the markets are starting to appreciate organic wines and organic olive oils with an additional price, and also with an impact in the market that is becoming nowadays quite evident. The water research for agriculture, and this is basically the issue we are dealing with at this summit, is of course for agriculture something absolutely essential. I don't go through the human consumption factor, because probably in some panels you will have time to discuss this issue. But in Portugal, what happened is that the water for human use is no more than 25% of the total water consumption in Portugal, and the other 75% are industrial uses, which can go up to something like 10%. And in agriculture, we spend 65% or about 65% of our water resources. And I have to say that a lot of this water is wasted. Is wasted in the sense that it's not used as it should be used, and this is basically something that we'll have to change before we were able to, and when we will be able to change the tremendous drought problem we have, especially in southern part of Portugal. I would like now to go to figure number 1, if I may. So, okay, this is a way of explaining why is that the dry and drought in not only in Portugal but in all the areas in the Iberian Peninsula south of the 38th parallel, more or less. Why did this happen? This is quite clear here that this subtropical, you see the center, and the center with the red lights. It's they used to be in southwest of the Azores Island. You can see the Azores Island. There are very small pieces of dark, and right in the center of the picture. And this high pressure systems, they do not allow the low pressure systems that are those that carry water. If you go to the left, you can see the low depression. They are painted in blue, and you can see that they can't go across the high pressure system. And so the water and the colors you have there is because at the low pressure systems there is subsystems called cold fronts and warm fronts, and there is also mixed fronts. But basically, those are the ones that carry water. What basically happens right now is the high pressure subtropical goes now northwest and is moving northwest, basically due to the warming of the not only of the planet but also of the sea. Water sea in the Atlantic are rising at a very fast rate, not only at the surface but also in the deep. So what happened is that the water carried by the low depression system goes basically around this high pressure, and basically dropped the water and left the water down in northern part of Europe. This is basically, and turns out to be a very difficult situation, especially for those located in southern part of Portugal. Can we change to next figure? Okay, now we can see quite clearly what happened in Portugal. You can see the northern part of the country with the water systems and the dam systems being at a very reasonable, especially because we had a good raining April and May months. But when you go down more or less down from the Tagus River, Tagus River is not an active element, but the mountains that are slightly north of the Tagus River, that's where basically created a way for the rain to drop from the low pressure systems. South of this, you can see clearly how difficult and what's really the problem of the drought in the southern part of Portugal. That's where we are located, okay? So basically everything depends here, and it's a tremendous dependency of the Alquiva Lake, which basically accounts for almost all the retained water in this part of Portugal. And there is pumping station, a huge pumping station that sends water westwards until the coastline, and as you can see, this is basically something really a huge problem. The Alqueva lake is the largest artificial lake in Europe, but it has a problem, which is the fact that the discharge level is around 152 meters. It's a quota of 152. Now it's this morning it was close to 145, 145.2. And the pumping station, the huge pumping station that assures not only the water for agricultural consumption, but also for human consumption in many of the southern cities of urban areas of South Portugal. And this is quite a problem, because if with the water consumption for agriculture and human, that usually goes down about 3.5–4 meters each year. If the drought continues, if we have, and that's very probable that we have more years of very dry winters, or we have a problem here, because the pumping system cannot pump if the level is below 138 meters. Meaning that we have by now 7 meters, which basically could be no more than 2 years. And as far as I can see, we have no solution for this issue. And right now it's becoming quite late to look after what I think it's the only solution. I have been on a tremendous and continuous fight to explain at all levels in Portugal that the only solution is to use the seawater, and desalinization is today the only thing that can really make the Alqueva Lake sustainable. And the fact is that in our culture, and I don't know why, we only have a very small desalinization plant in one of the small islands of Madeira, which is Porto Santo, building it's a very small, just for hotels that are around. But across the border and right in Spain, they have now 800 desalination plants. Almost everything for agriculture and human consumption, down to the 38th parallel in Spain, meaning Extremadura and Andalusia and also Valencia, are resources using filtered by osmosis system from the Mediterranean. I am absolutely convinced that it's very important to build such a huge station. We need it will take maybe 2 years. So right now it's becoming absolutely urgent to be aware of this problem. This problem is not only a problem for Alentejo, and I would like to show you next picture, please. You can see quite clearly that in the Tagus River, the situation is not so critical. Not because the Tagus River comes from Spain, but the fact is that there is still some rain that drops and can more or less, as you can see, the green line is a media of the last 2 years, and the blue one is the real fact right now. So we move to next, please. But when we see on the Guadiana area, then it's quite evident the huge problem we have, and it's becoming more and more difficult to solve and to wait just for the rain to drop from the sky. But this is also extending to the Algarve area. And the Algarve is one of the most important touristic areas. And right now, they also have a very, very serious drought problem. Next, please. You can see one area which is not so evident because of the rainy April and May, which is more in the central part of Algarve. But when you move to the next picture, that's located in the western part of Algarve, then you can see some more or less like the Guadiana issue. The fact that when I mention and trying to make clear that we have to use the seawater and desalination, it comes also on the fact that the underground waters and the aquifer system in Alentejo are almost exhausted. And I can show you clearly if you move to the next picture. Okay, you can see what's the problem. It's quite evident that the underwater in Alentejo and also in Algarve, but basically in Alentejo are almost exhausted. You can see this in the next and last picture, which shows you in the area around Esporão and basically Reguengos de Monsaraz. These are all the drills that were allowed to go for the aquifer system, for underground waters. Most of these drills are already dry, and they will be totally off business probably during last year. But the fact is that the water resources in the southern part of Portugal is a very, very dramatic issue. Thank you for your attention. Okay.
Thank you so much. I was in mute. For this enlightening exposition, bringing us so evidently the problem that water scarcity is very, very close to us. So it's happening already in Portugal. We are short on time, so I'll move quickly to the next speaker, Tiago Costa, who is a forestry engineer specialized in natural resources management, who has assumed several management responsibilities in different international companies related with the agriculture sector, and which is since 2017 the CEO of Sugal agricultural business. Sugal Group was established more than 50 years ago in Zambuja, a town in the Ribatejo region in Portugal, and is nowadays a global company, one of the largest tomato pasta and fruit puree producers worldwide, with the production plants in 3 countries, Chile, Spain and Portugal, which means that Sugal Group processes products in both the southern and northern hemispheres for over 6 months a year. So, and in order to move forward quickly, please, it's a pleasure for me to hand out the presentation to Engineer Tiago Costa. Please, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon to everyone. I'm delighted to be here and thankful to join this digital event. I would like to congratulate Católica for it. I have some unstable connection here, so if something happens, I will try to join later. The thing is, I would really like to, I think that the water is becoming more and more an issue for all of us, considering climate change and all the events that we foresee might happen in the future. And we should all have a conversation around it and try to find the best solutions. But before that, if you let me just introduce a little bit about Sugal Group, and if you go to the next slides, please. We have been passion for absolute quality in Sugal, and food safety remains at the center of our continuous improvement. This is all we take all around our principles and values. We take it to all levels of our principles and values around Sugal. And if you take it to the next slide, as was already mentioned, you could take it to the next slide, please. Yes, thank you. It was already mentioned, we have 360 vision that we have been, since the latest years, we have been growing at 2-digit growth because we have been able to drive this culture of excellence and this passion and commitment to the rest of the organization. So one of the key figures I would like to share with you is that we are present in 3 countries now, in Portugal, Spain, and in Chile, with 5 processing sites. So the most of the production we have is tomato processing production, and we are present in all with 2 sites in Portugal, 1 in Spain and 2 in Chile. We are the second or the third, depends on the year, processing tomato industry in the world, with capacity to have 2 crops in a year, because we are producing in 2 different hemispheres with completely different cropping conditions, which allows us also to have a completely different risk management compared to 2 other companies in this industry. So we have close to 1.8 million tons of fresh tomato. This is what we receive every year, and we are not talking about permanent crops. We are not talking about crops that grow every year. They have only 1 year as a cycle, or less than that as a cycle. We have a total turnover of 280 million euros, and we export most of our production. Most of our production is, if you could just categorize it a little bit, most of our production in Europe stays in Europe, and the rest of the production in Chile would be to supply the American continent. And we are present in many different countries. Could you go to the next slide, please? So in our vision, as a 360 vision, we take our model from field to plate. We are totally vertically integrated. We have our own nurseries, our own production, and the processing. It's true that we don't control the full process. We partner with many farmers in the tomato production, and we also have partnership with different nurseries in some countries, such as Chile. But one of the things we would like to do with our own production is to try to innovate and bring the best practices to the rest of the farmers in terms of sustainable use of resources, where water comes as a very important resource. Water for us is, since we're talking about a yearly crop, a crop that grows throughout the year, and it starts in the spring and it's harvested in the winter, we know that we need a lot of water for this crop to grow. And one of the things we have been looking at is how to become more sustainable in the use of the resources. Could you go to the next slide, please? And how do we do this? We use this sustainable approach in every different cycle and all different levels of the organization. We take it at the industrial production, where we have also the use of water, and we recycle the whole water, and then we give it back to the environment already completely clean water. We also have an approach. We consider that sustainability is not only the use of resources, but also the way we treat and work with our people. And we also have to try to bring this approach, this philosophy to our people, so that our people would also have this
Yes, Tiago, I believe we lost you for some seconds. Maybe a problem with the connection. Well, if while we wait for Tiago, maybe we'll have to move on, as we are very short in time. So let us give him some seconds more. Tiago. Okay, we lost Tiago. He'll probably reconnect with us. So I will move to the next speaker while Tiago tries to join us again. Dr. José Bastos will be the next speaker for BIAL. Dr. José Bastos is a doctor who has been working as a manager in the pharmaceutical sector.
I think okay. Tiago returned.
Tiago? Hello?
Hello?
Yes, Tiago, we lost you for some, no problem.
So I was referring back to the sustainable approach. Sorry, if you can just go back to the slide. So you could go to the next one. And what I was saying is that we use water, our main quantities of water are used in agriculture. And for that, we are completely changing the different equipments to irrigate the crops. And we are going to drip irrigation, which allows us to become more efficient and to preserve 40% of the water compared to other different systems. We are also looking at soil moisture monitoring to try to irrigate only when the crop is needing the water, and try to recycle and the reuse of water. So one of the things that we are doing here as a company is we're trying to adopt as much as possible all the transformative inputs in farming practices, such as changing the way we are, if we are tilling the soil or not, which is one of the things that will have an impact in the soil, the life of the soil, and also that will eventually reduce the moisture of the soil. And we are putting other different operations in place that will reduce this kind of impact. We are also looking into the optimal resource use of resource, like using the best varieties and the best mix for each variety of tomato that are applied for different conditions, and making sure that we do it while we restore the environment using, for instance, what we call the cover crops. But one of the things that for us is key and critical for all this thing to happen is to use technology and the digital platform as a way to become more efficient in the use of water. We have been doing that for already some years now, and we have been improving very much the use of technology. And we did with that, we already consider that we can at least reduce 5 to 10% the use of water just by deploying new different technologies. And I would like just as a final message, just relating a little bit to what was already mentioned by the Minister of the Environment. In Tejo, where Riva Tagus, where most of the tomato production is located, and most of the plants, most of the industry is located, we don't have a strategic approach to water use. We have to work with farmers to go in that direction, but we also need the political and the authorities to take some action and to become more strategic in the way to preserve the water. What has been done so far is that we use groundwater instead of surface water. And we don't have any capacity to regulate the water flow in the River Tagus. Most of it is done in Spain, and we don't have any way of controlling the water flow, which means that in the summer days when we need to irrigate and the water flow is much lower, we have a problem. We start to irrigate with a water that doesn't have good quality, and we go to groundwater. So what we think that would be a great approach is to think to look at this problem holistically, and eventually work to have more water dams or reservoirs that would at least allow us to have a better control of the water flow in River Tagus. This is, sorry, I know that we are late on time, and since I was cut, I will stop here and wait for any questions if there's any.
Yeah, thank you so much for your great presentation. It was quite interesting to see how Sugal Group is already addressing water in a holistic way concerning its activities. I'll move on very quickly to the next speaker. Dr. José Bastos is a doctor who has been working as a manager in the pharmaceutical sector since the 1990s, having assumed several top managing and executive responsibilities at Roche and Merck Sharp and Home in several different countries, namely with responsibilities for South America. Is at the present moment the Chief Operating Officer at Bial. And Bial is a pharmaceutical company headquartered in São Mamede do Coronado, near Oporto in Portugal. It was founded almost 100 years ago and is amongst the largest companies of its kind in Portugal, while its products are sold in pharmacies in more than 58 countries and in 4 continents: Europe, America, Africa, and Asia. So I'm glad to hand out the presentation to Dr. José Bastos.
Thank you, Dr. Francisco Herrera. Thanks also to Universidade Católica University for inviting me. Before I start, I have to do an important disclaimer. I'm not a water specialist, and here I'm much more learning from others than teaching something or sharing something that eventually you don't know. So I will start quickly about what's the footprint of, in case of Bial, what's Bial about. So can I go to the next slide, please? So Bial is a research-based pharma company based in Portuaria, as was referred. We have a research headquarters with offices, research labs, and production site at Maya, and business turnover 350 million a year, with research and development investments of 60 million a year, which in our industries is very high in terms of percent of sales. It's low in terms of the real volume, 60 million. We need to invest much more in research because the death rate of new products is very high. So we are focused more on CNS, central nervous system, like epilepsy and Parkinson's disease. This is basically our core area of research, but also in cardiovascular and respiratory areas. And on those two, we don't have products from our own research, but we try to licensing in some products or partner with important global pharma companies that are specialists in this, like Merck or Glaxo, Pfizer or AstraZeneca. Our business is 60 or 70% is Europe, and the total business only 55%, 25% is Portugal. So 75% of our business is outside of the country. US is 20% today. Will be hopefully in the next 2 to 3 years higher, probably approaching to 30%, 27, 30%. As I told you, we have 2 BIAL research products approved by FDA, which is the American regulatory body, and by EMA, which is the European one, and also hopefully in the very near future by Japanese authorities and other Asian authorities. We have subsidiaries in 6 European countries, but we are present also in more than 50 countries with partnerships or with agencies. So, but as a subsidiaries, BIAL subsidiaries, we are in 6 ones, also in Latin America and in the Portuguese-speaking countries. And the most important ones are, Mozambique and Angola, the most relevant business there. And I talked about the US and Japan. We will not present in US as a company. We will be in the next, near future. But we have an important business for us already in US through again partnerships with global companies that sell our products there. Next slide, please. So, in general terms, water is really again an important asset for a pharma company. I will give you some. The use of water is somewhat different from what we saw in the other industries. There's a high regulated standards regulated by the good manufacturing practices for water production, storage, distribution industry. That's very well defined. Also, this is defined again by the agencies, but also present in the global pharmacopoeias like EU, US, and Japan. We are audited very frequently on this, on our, not only on GMPs, but also on the, well, part of GMPs is that the water is an important component. We are audited by basically all regulatory agencies that want to audit us, and of course the ones that we have products in the market, they come and audit us in the beginning, and before we launched the product, they certified us, and then of course along the years that we produce and supply the markets. We have kind of 3 kind of water that we use. One is the potable water, the purified and highly purified, and then accepted and distilled water. The last one, in case of BIAL production side, we are not using this because that's using for injectables, and we are not producing at our site the injectables products. So, of course, for injectables, which is apart from this, all aseptic production cycle is absolutely critical, as you can imagine, because you're really injecting directly on the blood stream some product that we have to be assured that is absolutely aseptic. Then the water cycle is, well, part of it, when I say owned, is we use the potable water coming from the water network from the area, the official potable water. But then we have also our drill, and then we treat water, and then we storage, and we treat then after using it, and we don't outsource any part of it. And in general, the industry does not outsource this because it's very critical, and really want to maintain this within the perimeter of the company. And you can move to the next slide. So as I told you, water quality, the standards we talked about, we start with potable, but then to go to purified, and purified and highly purified is used for recipients of the products, and also for the production for what you call solids and liquids. So being solids being tablets, and then liquids maybe syrups or nebulizers. In the case of respiratory like asthma, you use nebulizers products. And again, as I told you, aseptic water for parenteral. Now, what's important to know is that when you go for potable water to purified or highly purified, in fact, you lose a lot. The system is not very efficient. Even the best system, we waste lots of water when you transform potable to purified. So that's something that we try to to improve as much by having the best equipments to do that, and keep up to the state-of-the-art equipments as much as we can. Again, the injectables is not our case, but we have this field to reverse osmosis, ultrafiltration, but again, it's only in the case we produce in our plant, which is again not our case, but it goes for IV products, parenteral, biologics, vaccines, and even some dialysis products. So water efficiency, of course, because of the costs are important. Again, the costs of the water here for us are important, as we basically generally pay for it. But the use of water is not as intensive, of course, as it is in agriculture, for instance, as we saw the last examples. And I have some data to show for the last slide. I think it's the slide has some data from the company. I think I talked about this. Can we go for? I think we have another slide. Yes. So no. So not this slide before. Yeah. Thank you. So the company in Portugal waste kind of 20,000 cubic meters of potable water a year. I understand it's not a huge amount, but it's a relevant amount. So we use it for transforming it to purified and highly purified water, and that it's being used on our tablets and liquids, mainly syrups. In our case, we don't produce nebulizers. We have nebulizers in our product portfolio as a licensing in products, but we don't produce locally in our plant. So we produce around 20 million packs of tablets per year, and then the other thing that's also important is then after the production, what we do, we have our only called small ether treatment station. That then only after that it goes to the to the normal discharge, to the normal say flow of water. But everything goes first step is going through ether treatment that is located on the site, and we pretty careful about this. Because of the values of the company, of course, and also because, again, as I told you, the very stringent regulations that we have to abide through, and the very frequent audits that we have from all countries, European and US, that come and audit us very frequently. So that's basically my input about water in terms of pharma companies, in terms of PL, and thanks for inviting me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. José Bastos. It was a great presentation, and I'm happy to have learned from you a different perspective as to what regards the water issues in the pharmaceutical sector, which was totally distant from. So we have only about, let's say, 3 to 4 minutes to answer a question, which I would like to put to both of to three of you, and I would move straight forward to it. I would like to ask you if, considering the key actions your companies are taking, what would you strongly advise other companies to take as to what regards addressing the issues in order to guarantee the competitiveness, security of supply chain, and at the same time the sustainability of all your value chain in the face of highly volatile water and energy, because there's a very close relationship with water. So considering the highly volatile water and energy supply context. I don't know if Dr. José Roquette would like to start.
Okay, I'm on audio now.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I think the issue and the basic approach Francisco just showed us. I want to say about this that Esporão exports about 65% of its production. We do it on a different basis than most of the table wine producers in Portugal. In the important markets and the strategic ones, we have our own company and our own people. That's basically in Angola and in Brazil and in United States and also in Europe. And may I say also that in Brazil, the Esporão is the top European table wine brand. I mean, we are better than making better in Brazil than the Spaniards or the French or the Italians, and this has been a long-term work that is now really producing very nice results, if I may say so. What we can do, and basically on this, to try to avoid, we have had strategic problems to face. We have been moving high. We have moved from lower Alentejo into the higher part of Alentejo, into Porto Alegre, about 1,000 meters high, in order to find better weather conditions there. And we are also very much involved on choosing the kind of variety we will be producing, and probably we'll have to return to the traditional varieties of Alentejo that basically do not need water. Anyway, we now use just 20% of the water we use about 7-8 years ago, and in what energy is concerned, we are self-sufficient right now, using biomass and photovoltaic energy. I think that's what I can say for now, sir.
Thank you once again. I don't know if Dr. José Bastos or Engenheiro Tiago Costa would like to give us some insight also. Dr. José Bastos, you are mute. You are muted.
Yeah, now I'm mute. Okay. No, I'm just,
yeah.
Eventually I can comment. It's not, well, it's more from the professional experience, not exactly with Bial, but I think that of course the more global companies and what everyone is looking into the water cycle and basically is how reutilizing the water is an important discussion at the production sites, and also the state-of-the-art processes that you use and the equipment that you use, right? And so which are extremely expensive, and that important investments doing on that side. But from what I know, that's where all the companies are going. in fact, very actively pursuing this because of the water quality that is needed, and because the process and the equipment are very expensive. So the water efficiency needs to be, improving, say every year improvement on water. So I think it's basically about recycling out the new processes, like, how can you use better those processes and improving state-of-the-art equipment, which is very expensive. But we are, as I see on some of the reports of the global companies that address these issues, I think they are doing important progress on that area. That's my take-home message when I look at those reports.
Thank you. Tiago, I don't know if you would like to add something else.
If I can mention, just in the case of Sugal, what we're doing here, we started a center of excellence that is now currently studying all the different practices in tomato production, exactly to make sure that we try to introduce the best practices in all different stages. And one of the things we're looking at is how to make sure that we use the resources properly. So water is a big resource for us. Soil is another one, as you can imagine. And we are trying to make sure that we apply all the technical information and the technical knowledge to improve the best practices, not just for our own production, but also to bring it back to the farmers that we partner with. The other thing is what we are doing here, we are trying to apply technology to everything we do here. Technology is a big mean to help us become more efficient and to help us learn faster from all the different things that we are doing. It has been already currently and been using in other different crops, not so much in tomato production, but big data and machine learning is one of the things that are currently very much developed in many different areas. And we are currently, with this Center of Excellence, developing different partnerships and also having some knowledge internally to address this issue and to try to develop this kind of competencies that would allow us to become more efficient in the future. I think technology and all that comes with it would allow us to become much more efficient, together with, of course, with what I just already mentioned, with a different approach to water reserves and dams that we should take it in the future in this area. But this is one of the approaches Sugal is taking.
Yeah, thank you so much for your comment. I hope you will have the opportunity to stay with us or to join us tomorrow, because we will have a track regarding particularly this issue, technology and innovation, track 3, tomorrow at 5:30. Thank you so much to everybody. It was a great panel. I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to moderate this debate. Unfortunately, we are very short in time, so I will just move on to hand over to Manan for the next 4 questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Francisco, and the first panelist. I will continue again with another poll. So please take your time to read the question and fill out what you consider to be the best answer. Okay, questions are coming, answers are coming in. Great. I will end the poll. And as you can see, most of the attendees today are considering all of the above parties to be responsible to solve the water scarcity challenges, which I guess is what we have seen as well so far in the panels and by the keynote speakers. Thank you again for for answering this question. I would like to now continue with our new guests, photographer Mario Maquilau. Mario is in Mozambique right now, and I would like to show you a video of his renowned project Dream River on the effects of water shortage in his home country. Well, I believe this is a beautiful video on the how well Mario documents the effects of the water problem in Mozambique. Let's see if we can get in touch with Mario. I believe he just entered. Can you hear me, Mario?
Yes, I can hear you. Hi.
Great.
Hi, everyone.
Very nice meeting you online. Mario,
Yes.
I had a question for you about your project.
Yes.
What is one of the main drivers for you to do this project?
Well, one of the things is that I, like myself as a photographer, I don't believe in photography as aesthetic object, but also I believe in photography as instrument as instrument to influence people for positive changes. So I use the photography to show the hidden realities in my country, and then like the situation of water, and then the environmental condition also in Mozambique that many people, they don't know. Even here in Mozambique, where you have the lack of infrastructure, the government doesn't know, or other people also doesn't know. So my work, it's mainly based on how do you call it, as an instrument of like to show that reality, that hidden reality.
Great, thank you so much. It is very inspiring. The pictures are beautiful. The link is included in this presentation, which we will share later with all participants. Thank you so much, Mario.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, I would like to now to introduce to you the next speaker, Sofia Cordeiro, a senior advisor to the Environment Deputy Mayor's Office of the City of Lisbon. Hi, Sophia.
Hi.
Sophia works on strategic policies for efficiency in water and energy management. And she aims to close the urban water cycle in Lisbon and replace non-potable uses with recycled water. She recognizes her responsibility in leaving future generations with a city that can sustainably grow. Sophia, the floor is all yours.
So I know that we are pressured on time as much as maybe as a metaphor on how we are running out of time also to make some changes to the policy in our cities and in our countries to make sure that we have the capacity to sustain life with quality of life, especially in cities which concentrate the most of the world population. And especially regarding water, which is a natural resource, it's a finite resource, so we need to handle it with care. So Lisbon is this year's European Green Capital. This is an award which is much more than just the recognition of the policies that are being developed, and it's also a recognition of the vision for the future that the city leaders have. And the European Green Capital also means that Lisbon is an ambassador this year for urban sustainability for the whole world. And we now hold this title forever. So this means that from now on, we need to make sure that we represent green capitals, green cities in Europe. So Lisbon, one of the main topics of the year is water. And this is because in Europe, we feel that Southern European cities have the responsibility to raise their hand and say, careful, because the water issue is not seen in the same way throughout Europe. So we feel that talking about water scarcity, and the need to protect water reserves is very, very important, since Northern European countries do not feel in the same way the pressure for the resource, the water resource. And so that is one of the reasons that we are doing a lot of initiatives surrounding water. One of them, which I would like to point out, is a very good and a very large exhibition, which will open in October at the Knowledge Pavilion at Pavilhão do Conhecimento in Lisbon. And that exhibition will then travel to other cities in Europe. And Mário Macilau, you might want to check this one out, because it relates very, very directly to the work that you do, which is beautiful, by the way, because it will talk about access to water. But coming back to green capital, so in Lisbon, I can then leave you with a good presentation that you can share with everyone on what we are doing regarding water policies. But we're mainly working, of course, on savings, both on efficiency, so changing equipments, changing systems, modernizing, using technology to save water wherever we can, but also controlling leakage. Leakage is in the world, one of the biggest sources of water consumption. It's not consumption because it's being lost, but leakage is an issue that we need to target when we're talking about water. Because in a lot of countries, the money for investments in infrastructure is not there. And when it is, it's channeled to new investments to prioritize places where there is no access yet. And so the investments on maintaining the systems and the infrastructure might not be there. So leakage investments are a big part of what we do. Then we're also focusing on reuse, and water reuse is something that we want to raise awareness on, but not only on what can be done, but also to show that it's safe. And so in Lisbon, we're implementing a whole network to supply the city with water that is good for all non-potable uses. And this is something that is quite important, because we will start with our own uses, irrigation, street washing, but then because we are establishing this network in the city, it can supply in the future industrial uses, private uses such as the football fields, any private garden, any private small industrial scale system, and even climatization systems. So for instance, I can tell you that the IKEA store in Loures, which is just outside of Lisbon, the whole climatization system is runs on recycled water. It doesn't use any potable water. So this is something that is becoming more mainstream in managing companies, in managing systems. And I would like to, because this audience today is not only composed of people relating to sustainability or urban issues, but also economists, also business managers, I would like to leave you with something that has been a topic of discussion between people in city management and people in the finance world, such as the World Bank, the European Investment Bank, OECD, and the European Union have been talking about this, which is how can we make sure that the investments that are needed in water, both in infrastructure, but also in efficiency and in making water consumption sustainable, how can we make these investments interesting enough to tap into the private financing market? And one of the ways that this can be done is by connecting water consumption with energy consumption. And so this is a topic for discussion maybe for tomorrow, to raise with the startup community and to look into what ideas can come up to do this. We are looking into that in Lisbon, namely with projects for instance, with the National Laboratory for Civil Engineering, which I know some of the people are here today in the audience. We are working on a very large H2020 project, in which one of the topics that we'll study is how can we connect these two issues and create a model of financing, for instance, for building retrofits. So for the domestic consumption sector, it's very important to make sure that we have the mechanisms in place for the private homeowners to be able to retrofit their buildings and not only change windows or ceilings, which is very important for energy efficiency, but couple that with the investments also to save water, namely the possibility of gray water reuse inside the buildings, or the
Are you still there, Sophia? It's quite the cliffhanger we have here. Sophia? All right, let's move on to the next topic on the agenda and see if Sophia comes back at the later stage. We accounted for a short break now to give everyone the opportunity to break for a few minutes. I see. Sophia, can you hear me? Well, I see her, but I can't hear her. All right, let's have.
And I'm back, but I was basically finished. So
okay.
this is my message for the business sector: is how can we make sure that we make these investments attractive for the private sector, because we definitely need everybody to pitch in to and to invest in the areas in which water needs attention, let's say.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this extensive presentation. Indeed, like you're saying, the Lisbon Green Capital is an award for life that will hopefully leave its how do you say it? Leave its track for the upcoming years as well for this this problem. And we will see if we can incorporate it into tomorrow's panel with the startups as well. Thank you so much, Sophia. I would like now to continue to the next and last panel of today, moderated by Felipe Pires de Almeida. Felipe, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Manu. So welcome everyone to this panel on sourcing and production, and with the industry cases of automotive sector, utilities, IT, and textiles. My name is Filipa, and I'm a research fellow on the Center for Responsible Business and Leadership at Católica Lisbon. And it's with great pleasure that I'm moderating this panel that brings together these amazing panelists, but also industries for so many different fields, but all of them facing impressive challenges in what regards the water management. So we have with us representatives from some of the biggest industries in the world, heavily using water in their production process, but also the ones that bring the best practices on how to overcome these challenges and how to contribute to an exemplar water management that brings cleaner, brighter, and inclusive world for all. So to start our panel, I will invite Rita Pissarra. She is the Microsoft Portugal Chief Financial Officer. And I will invite Rita to share with us how Microsoft is facing the water management challenges and how they are finding new ways to deal with their increasing device. Rita worked in Microsoft for the last 70 years, and she worked in several countries, and now she is responsible for the financial strategy of the company here in Portugal. Rita is also a surf federated since she turned 18, and she was the national champion of kickboxing in '97. So welcome, Rita. The floor is yours.
Oh my God, I even blushed when you said that. Okay, I was expecting a more formal, Rita is the CFO of Microsoft, but you went all the way, so that was fine. Okay, so thank you so much. As mentioned before, hello everyone. My name is Rita Pissarra and I'm the CFO for Microsoft Portugal. And it is without a doubt a pleasure to be here today in this panel. I'll probably start talking for about 5 minutes just to give you a little bit of a retrospective where Microsoft is. I had 2 slides. Oh, there they are. Good. So I think we can advance for the second slide. There's only 3, so we're going to go directly to the second one. And what it says is that Microsoft is committed to harnessing the power of technology to help everyone, everywhere, build a more sustainable future. And so, as you may know, in the beginning of 2020, we announced goals focusing on being carbon negative by 2030, removing our historical carbon emissions by 2050, and 1 billion climate innovating fund, taking responsibility by committing to protect more land than we have actually used by 2025, and last but not least, our AI for Earth initiative. Clean drinking water is critical for all life, but unfortunately, as mentioned here today before, it is not easily available for everyone around the globe. According to the World Health Organization, nearly 1 billion people around the world lack the basic drinking water service, and at least 2 billion use drinking water source that is contaminated with feces. Water is precious, but finite. It's a resource that is critical to every person, being, and entity on this planet. It's also a resource that is increasingly difficult to obtain. Already, water scarcity is an issue in every continent. This situation will only become acute as populations grow and the planet continues to warm. In fact, the World Health Organization suggests that by 2025, nearly half of the world population will have a difficult time accessing clean water. Water scarcity is a global problem that must be addressed at the local level, and at Microsoft, we are steadfastly committed to sustainable water management. Microsoft has a comprehensive water strategy, which includes understanding the water-related risks and business impact in the places where we operate, setting goals, and improving our water use. If you go to the next slide, we talk about our approach. And our approach is to build a leading platform for technology solutions to environmental challenges by 4 areas. And let me talk about the first one. The first one relates to products and services. And here comes the AI for Earth. AI for Earth is the marriage of the artificial intelligence and the environmental changes. We're working to apply artificial intelligence to the issue of water Throughout our AI for Earth program, we have $50 million over a 5-year program. Microsoft is putting AI tools into the hands of individuals and organizations working on the front lines of the environmental changes, including water. To date, there's about 20% of the 137 projects in this AI for Earth program that we have granted, that we have given to our grantees, related to water projects. On the number 2, customer and partners, we think that being a global technology company, we know that we have a greater impact empowering others and not just looking within our 4 walls. One example of how we've applied technology to water space is the Water Risk Monetizer, a powerful tool that we have built in partnership with Ecolab and Trust Costs. This tool shows the cost of using water in every step of the business operation, from the manufacturing to the delivery, and can give companies an idea of how those costs will increase if water becomes a limited resource. This helps them manage water more efficiently and has the potential to reduce water consumption in many different industries. So the intention is easy, is to help customers and partners with their water management by reducing total and per capita water consumption, increase water recycling, and reduce leakages, as mentioned before, the previous lady, which I forgot the name, and the waste in storage and transmission. The third one is about policy. Microsoft is proud to join the UN CEO Water Mandate, a collaborative effort of corporations and NGOs designed to assist companies in the development, implementation, and disclosure of corporate water stewardship practices and policies. And then last but not least, our operations. And here we're diligently pursued water stewardship across our global operations. And one of the most ambitious projects was our new Silicon Valley campus. We announced that campus would be the first, and it is because it is now live, it is the first net zero potable water tech campus in the world. What does that mean? It means that 100% of the building's non-drinkable water is coming from rainfall and on-site recyclable water. Even here in Portugal, at another scale, when we refitted the office in Parque das Nações a year ago, we had this in mind, and we replaced all water faucets with water blades, for instance, where we can save 2/3 of the water being used. Another example is our Pioneer Texas data center, Texas data center. And in this Pioneer data center, we are using smart technology to reduce the use of water by monitoring 24/7 this usage and enabling us to recycle water and using recycled water over potable water. So all this to tell you that we are always looking forward to expand our work in the ways where we can save water by both within our operations and through our AI for Earth program. So more to come in the next couple of years. Time is of the essence. We are working together. We are working towards making a better world to live in. And this was my view.
Amazing, Rita, it was perfect. Thank you so much for sharing with us the Microsoft strategy in this so important issue. For now, I'm passing the word to Miguel Fonseca. Miguel is a Senior Vice President of People and Innovation, Technology and Corporate Affairs of Toyota Motor Europe. He took already leadership positions on the company, both in Europe and also in Africa region, as well as Latin America. He has been developing a strong passion for the car industry, as you can see by his path until now, and also for its contribution to society. So he's constantly looking for innovation, challenge, and continuous improvement as ways for the business to face its deepest challenges alongside with societal ones, as we will see with this presentation. So Miguel, the word is yours. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Filipa. So it's a pleasure for me to be here. I would like to thank Universidad Católica for the invitation and congratulate you for the organization. So it's also a pleasure to be with so many high caliber and high level speakers, which of course makes us very proud of belonging to this group. So I'd like to talk about water in the context of the Toyota environmental challenge, because water is one of the pillars of this challenge. So next slide, please. So you can see here that the objective is by 2050 to achieve zero CO2 emissions by using electrified vehicles and renewable energy, but also to establish a future society in harmony with nature by conserving our home planet resources. In this chart, you can see that it all starts with producing renewable energy, then the production of vehicles, both in the supply chain, the Toyota Group companies, and also in our dealers or retailers, which provide service to our customers. They are all part of this chain. And then finally, the usage of the vehicles, which should be on their own, conserving the resources and avoiding emissions into the atmosphere. And finally, the end of life treatment, which is part of the total 360 equation, by making sure that the reuse, the 3R, are applied at the end of the life of the products, with reusing the materials that the vehicles contain. So of course, all of this has to be done in respect for the environment. And you can see below that minimizing both water usage and also conserving the water quality in the water that is sent back into nature. It's part of this plan. And of course, absorbing CO2 is also an important part of this. And I will talk a little bit about how we intend to go what we call beyond zero environmental impact, because we would like to achieve a net positive impact on the environment through our activities, going beyond zero. So next slide, please. So in this context, we have set very clear targets. So there are targets every 5 years, and these targets are revised every 5 years. And I can show you on the next slide how the 2025 targets look like. Please, next slide. Which you can see here. So we have targets for CO2 emissions in the vehicles themselves, for CO2 in the production of the vehicles, and for CO2 emissions also in terms of the vehicle life cycle, including its recyclability at the end. On the right-hand side, you have the water and the harmony with the planet, and also the 3R activities mapped. And these are 6 of the DSGs, the 17 DSGs are matching this criteria that we are using. So next slide, please. And in relation to water, like everybody that has been presenting before, I believe that we follow the same principles, which are to minimize purchased water, to increase the usage of rainwater where possible, to increase, number 3 is to increase the use of recycled water in the process. And finally, number 4 is discharge high quality water when it is the case. And you can see on the little map on the top right, where we have some challenges because there is low rainfall in those areas, which presents a problem to those operations. So we need to go the extra mile in order to optimize the production there, respecting the environment. Next slide, please. So in Europe, initiatives to date, these are just some examples. On top, these are examples of water reduction, and on the bottom, examples of environmental protection. And you can see that we have the in-process and wastewater recycling and rainwater harvesting. So actually the rainwater harvesting was implemented in all plants by 2012, already 8 years ago. This was implemented in every plant. Then of course we are using solvent-free paints, water-based paints, and this facilitates, of course, a cleaner discharged water and facilitates the process to achieve a cleaner discharged water. Then we eliminate steam and humidification process, and we use dry cooling on the water to avoid evaporation or water loss into the environment. And then on the bottom, you have examples of the magnitude we go to in order to treat the wastewater on the bottom left-hand side picture. And then we also test in laboratory the water we discharge to make sure it's in line with the standards that we define. And I can say that the water we discharge has higher quality than the water we bring into the facilities. So we purify the water, even the discharged water has a higher quality than the one that gets into our facilities. So next slide, please. Some KPIs, some numbers. You can see there that these are the numbers for Toyota manufacturing France, which are benchmark numbers in our French plants. By the way, I would like to clarify that although Toyota is a global manufacturer, we are also a European manufacturer because we produce close to 1 million vehicles in Europe out of the 1.2 million we sell every year. So we pretty much contribute to society also from that perspective. Here you can see that the percentage of water used now, it's 46% purchased, 36% is rainwater, and 18% of the water is recycled wastewater. Also, the water usage as a result of this, of the efforts now is at 1.8 cubic meters per vehicle, which is a global blueprint. It's much lower than the global average. And we have zero, of course, non-compliance or complaints in relation to the way we handle water. And we have, in total, we have reduced the water usage per vehicle by 15%, and this is at global level, since 2013. And noting that, that reduction does not include the stats for rainwater and recycled water. So the water used, fresh water used has been reduced a lot more than 15%. And we use about 50%, a little bit over 50% of the average of our competitors in Europe in terms of cubic meters of water used per vehicle produced, which is a very good achievement, of course. Next slide, please. I would like to talk now about an interesting challenge, because we believe a lot in the hydrogen society and we are making big investments in this direction. We will see more of that at the Paris 2024 Olympic Games, where Toyota will make an effort to introduce into Paris a little bit of the early steps of the hydrogen society. We believe that, as I will comment later, that water will be an energy carrier in the future. Of course, you need to separate hydrogen from oxygen. But these days, you know, in this slide, you can see there are three ways of producing hydrogen. One is so-called gray hydrogen by converting gas into hydrogen, but with CO2 being freed into the atmosphere. The blue hydrogen is actually storing the CO2 underground, also from natural gas. And on the right-hand side, you have water being used in electrolysis to produce hydrogen, separating hydrogen from oxygen. And this is the way we believe we should go, of course. So in this sense, hydrogen will be a major energy carrier. And maybe some in the audience are not familiar with that. We already are producing vehicles that use hydrogen as a fuel cell to move the vehicles. So the vehicles have electric engines, but the hydrogen is converted into electricity in the vehicle itself, and then the vehicle uses the electricity produced on board in order to go from A to B. And the emissions of those vehicles are exclusively water and oxygen. So there is no other emission from this vehicle, which is the cleanest vehicle you can have, as long as the hydrogen is produced also on a green basis. So you can go to the next slide, please. So this is a very interesting slide. You can see on the bottom that if we would replace the whole European fleet of vehicles from all manufacturers, from using fossil fuels into using hydrogen, we would need to use two Lake Geneva capacity of water in order to replace the whole fossil fuel and all 100% of the emissions that are these days affecting Europe. And of course, the advantage is that this hydrogen, we would be using two Lake Genevas, but we would be sending back to the water to the atmosphere and to the planet, because it's simply the byproduct is water. So the water it comes through the exhausts, and so it is reabsorbed by the environment, leaving no traces. So it's not water that disappears, it's simply used as an energy carrier and sent back to the environment. So we believe this is the future of transportation and the future of the planet. And we think that it's our duty to continue to invest in this direction. And I thought it was interesting here in this panel to refer to this, and not only to the, of course, the important challenges that we face on water usage. So, and this is all from my side.
Thank you so much, Miguel. It was a very good presentation. Thank you for letting us know that it's impressive how Toyota can save water on the production and how it uses almost half of the average the other industries in Europe are really doing. And thank you for letting us know about this challenge of the hydrogen in the future. Then we can see cars as also ways to transport water and not only people. Thank you. And now we are passing the word to Ricardo Silva. He's joining our panel from the north of Portugal. He's head of operations of Tintex, one of the most representative companies on the textile industry in Portugal. Ricardo himself is a chemical engineer, and before Tintex, he worked for several years in the tire industry. Now he joined the family business, Tintex, since 2015. And Ricardo is now a board member, assuming the direction of the area where the company most uses, spends, and treats the water resources. So being in one of the most water-consuming industries in the world, Ricardo, what is the experience you have to share with us?
Hi, everyone. First of all, thanks for the invitation. And today I bring a simple question, I think. So, do we all know how much water we are wearing today, and what is our goal for the next future? And it's difficult to account and to know how much water we are wearing, but if we take some simple concepts, I think we can get there. So textile industry in general is one of the most pollutant industries for water today. So together with oil, automotive, textile is there. There are different numbers, but people accounted for the second one. I will try to show you how much water we use in Tintex, and I consider we are, I would say, a very small company in the world in this business. And I try to quantify what is our scale globally, and I would say there are 15,000 companies like us, let's say, in average in the world. So what we will account here, we can multiply by 15,000, 15000, to know how much water we are spending just in textiles, okay? So, but before that, just a few slides on what we do here. So our area of activity, so this is our front yard, let's say, our area of activity is on dyeing and finishing. So how we color the fabrics, how we have this touch and this performance of non-shrinking or getting stable over the time, so you can wash it every time because someone is working in this field, and this is our area of application. And to do that, we actually use a lot of water. Some people account like 1,000 liters per a t-shirt. Some people account for 5,000 liters per a pair of jeans. That would be about 5 different bathtubs, washers. So, but I will take it simpler in a few slides. Melanie, if you can go a little bit forward. So these are just pictures of what we do here. So we use dye stuffs, chemistry, powders and liquids to give exactly these colors. And these are all chemicals. So we use heavy chemistry that was purified over the years. So before it was really bad chemistry, I would say. And today I would consider that we have very good solutions in the world, thanks to all the industry in Europe and Asia as well. And these are a few machines. On the left side is one of our lab equipments, just to dose those small amounts. On the right side, we see a bigger machine where we really produce the fabrics. If we go another slide, so just an example. On the left side, we have a pure white fabric. On the right side, let's say a final product, and this is more about branding that we use for our company. But the idea is to produce beautiful fabrics, very comfortable, mostly about cotton and natural fibers. And this is our field of specialization. And in fact, we only work because we can use water. If there was no water in the world, we could not produce anything. So that's mandatory, it's essential. There is not yet any technology to dye cotton or any type of comfortable fiber, let's say, without water. In polyester and synthetics, there are already a few things going on with just carbon dioxide and these kind of gases without any water, but not for cotton. So we use water. We need to use, what we need to think is, where do we get this water from? What do we do with it? And then what happens afterwards, after our processing? So this will be my talk now. So in the next slide, we can see a brief example on the amounts. So I try to make it simple. In a single day here at Intex, like today, we are using water. And with only this day, we are producing enough water or utilizing enough water that could be used for a full match at Benfica, full stadium, okay? In this match, if we give 2 bottles of water to each person there, another click, please. So 2 bottles per each of the persons, of the people there, we would fill all the games that Benfica plays at home, just with a single day of work. So this is our scale at Intex. If we multiply by 15,000, imagine how many matches, how many people, how much water we could give fresh water to everyone if we did not utilize or if we don't treat it. These are just our scale. So, and in this scale, what do we do? Are we big? Are we small? I would not consider we are big. So if we click another one. So, and utilizing this water, we produce the equivalent of a t-shirt. Can you go more, another click? For every of these players. I've run on these players, another one, and they can buy 1 t-shirt every day. So for 3 years, that's the point. So we produce a fair amount of fabric, but not that special because I just say 22 players during 3 years. The point is, it's a lot of water. And if we don't do anything to treat it, then we get into big disasters like rivers getting polluted and turning red, turning green, turning black, like it was happening before in Portugal. Now it's happening somewhere in the world still. In Bangladesh and India, we see a few of these cases. But in Portugal, we saw this 15 years ago, 15, not 50, 15. And some of these rivers were really highly polluted. Today is different, okay? So our biggest challenge is actually to reduce the toxicity of all the chemistry we use, of these dye stuffs. So are they natural based? Are they synthesized? Do they disintegrate themselves in the water? So these are our topics of today. And we are using and developing technologies to use like herbs, like a tea infusion. This is one of our biggest technologies here. So we really save a lot of water in processing, and then we can just drink it afterwards. But that's just yet niche. It's not mass production, but I think it will get over and over to increase. But the point is, we can fully reutilize this water, at least fully treat it. Today, in our situation, we treat all the water, we discharge fresh water into the river, and we collect sludge that needs to be further treated and can be utilized in agriculture as fertilizer. This is our state of the art. But still, we are utilizing fresh water every day. Fortunately, in our area, we have not yet any scarcity of water, so we could work continuously, and water is still free of charge. We can pull it from the ground, just paying us a small fee. But in the next years, I don't know if it will be 5, 10, 20, it will be expensive for everyone. And people need to take care about it and plan the business ahead. So having all this in mind, it's a business, but it's also ethics. We need to think about scarcity of water in the industry and then also on the consumer level, because I don't think everyone knows about this, but all the industry spends like 2/3 only of the water used in textiles. The other third is spent by every one of us. When we wash, more than we should, and utilizing a lot of detergents, more than we should, and all these extra steps, we are actually damaging this water, which needs then to be further treated, and sometimes is not. And one of the biggest pollutants today in the water, it's something that we don't see easily, which are microplastics. I think all of us heard before coronavirus, we were hearing a lot of microplastics there and there in the fish, in the food. Each one of us today is drinking water with microplastics because it's impossible to completely filter it. If it is a problem or not for us, I don't know, but we have it. And we need to think carefully on other topics, but that's a point of design in textile, not water, but fiber usage. It's a different topic. But I always put this question to everyone: what are we doing really to save water? And what can we do more on the industry side and on the consumer side? From our case in the company, and I really try to push everyone in the sector in Portugal and worldwide, is to make everything you can to reduce chemistry, toxicity, and treat it afterwards. So we are bringing a big project to recycle all the water used, so we can give all these fresh water bottles to every fan in Benfica matches. But then there are also new technologies coming in, so we can reduce the number of washes in our clothing. We can wear much more, and not feeling like should I wash more or less. This will be natural. In the next 10, 20 years, I think we will reduce really the amount of washes we are using, and this will be a natural way, but not yet. So there's a big way to go. So I embrace this, and I challenge everyone to do the same. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ricardo, for your so illustrative presentation and for this big challenge that you leave us in the end. And now we are going ahead with José de Mel Bandeira. He's the country manager of Veolia in Portugal, and he has a vast experience on the construction, infrastructure, and energy sectors. Before Veolia, he passed different areas in Sombac Group, and now he runs Veolia in Portugal, controlling the energy, water, and waste activities of the company. He is also part of the board of Smart Waste Portugal and a member on advisory board of the Business Council for Sustainable Development here in Portugal. A curiosity about José de Mel Bandeira is also that he participated on the construction of Vasco da Gama Bridge. So every time you look for the bridge, you can also remember José de Mel Bandeira, but you'll see that now he's talking about many nice water solutions that they have in Veolia. The word is yours, José. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would prefer to be a kickboxer like Rita, but I am not. Anyhow, you gave the example of the Vasco da Gama Bridge. I would prefer that you would give the example of the Stadium of Sporting, because Mr. Roquette is here with us. And in fact, he was the one starting that project. And finally, I also helped him in developing such one. And this was because of Ricardo, because he was presenting such an important case study. The only mistake was that he was using the Benfica Stadium. But again, That's his mistake. I would like to translate, if I could, because probably Veolia is not that well known for everybody, but at least we like to see each other internally as the ones that could be helping solving some of the problems or the issues or the questions that have already been raised during these two panels, which, by the way, are excellent examples of local companies or international local operation companies, as we have heard. So issues like reusing water, desalination, as Mr. Riquet mentioned, water quality, as Mr. Sebas mentioned, also those issues are part of our activities. But I believe, and I was challenged to try to give numbers to the problems that we are facing. If we could go to the next slide, please, just to tell a little bit. And here I'm going to challenge a little bit my panel, because we are in a panel whereby we, for instance, if we talk about the fashion industry, they are responsible for 10% of all humanity's carbon emissions. Ricardo is also part of it, but it's a small portion. For instance, the automotive industry is responsible for 9% of CO2 emissions. And digital technology that we are not aware of, but in fact it accounts already for 4% of carbon emissions. And Rita is probably aware of, but in fact, if you consider, for instance, we try to translate into figures, going back to the jeans example of Ricardo, if you are wearing jeans today, which I am not, I can't, but if you are wearing a jeans today, probably in average took 10,000 liters to produce it. 10,000 liters, it doesn't say that much for us. But if you try to translate that in, for instance, the amount of showers that you can take, well, you could take a shower per day during 1 year, okay? If you try to translate that in the amount of water that you, in average, drink per day, well, you could drink it for the next 16 years to come. So you can now start thinking about, if you are wearing a pair of jeans, the amount of water you should be saving. A car is pretty much the same example. We have heard Miguel mentioning the amount of water they are already saving. Still, Toyota is a very good example. It's not exactly all the way through the automotive industry, and the amount of water per car produced is tremendous yet, okay? When it comes to digital, it's a lot more difficult to translate into our daily practices. But for instance, a guy like me, so I'm an average worker in the OECD kind of countries, for instance, 1 year of emailing corresponds for more than 300 kilometers driven by car. So in average, you are already emitting 140 kilograms of CO2 per year only by emailing, in average. Just for you to have an understanding of what we are talking about. And this to come back to an issue which I believe is of utmost importance, which is climate change is in fact increasing the water risks. If we could go a slide further, please, and just to try to explain it a little bit. When it comes to water scarcity, and we have already discussed it, and Katerina, you remembered, she made a bright picture of the situation we are in. It's, I would say, a lot worse, because if you can look into the red or hot zones, it's in fact where the water scarcity is an issue. And if we look better, you will see that Portugal is also painted in red. At least half of Portugal is painted in red. And probably what we are not all about or aware of is that we have a lot of water in the planet. In fact, 70% of the planet is water. But the trigger is that only 3% of that water is sweet water. It's potable water. That's why we have a problem. And this one, it should raise our awareness, but in fact, should urge us to make a difference and try to change the way we are doing things. Next slide, please. I'm trying to go a little bit faster just to introduce. I'm going to say, because everybody mentioned that consumption is increasing for all kind of usage, personal, industrial, agricultural, so it's growing every day. Next one, please. But it's not the problem of the increasing the usage of the water. It's the way we use the water. It's in fact creating another problem, the water pollutions. And therefore, I'm not going to go into detail, but we have heard about pharma, we have heard about agriculture, we have heard about automotive, well, all kind of usage introduced not only the problem of using water, but the issue of the water that we are giving back to nature. I'm not going to talk about that today, just to say that technology is available to solve all those problems, okay? It's not in itself a problem, it's just a way of using the knowledge and the technology already there. Next one. This one is an important because when we talk about water usage, we tend to forget the climate issues. I would like to give you the tremendous challenge that we are facing. If we want to keep the temperature below 1.5 or 2 degrees even, we have to change completely the way we are doing things. And changing completely means that we have to save 60% of the CO2 emissions that we are producing today, which is a tremendous challenge. And most of us probably will say it's an impossible to do, which I will dare to say it's not impossible. It's in our range. It's just a matter of decision process. And I will show you a little bit, next slide, how we could be accelerating this, I would say, transformation, which I would call, I would say, the ecological revolution that we are facing. And giving you as an example of a study that we've produced together with Roland Berger was try to identify what would be the contribution of the environmental sector into this fight against CO2 emissions. And if we take only on the right side of the slide, it's what we call the environmental sector, which includes, of course, all the situations that we have mentioned already, but just to say that we could, in fact, with this 35% of total, in fact, contribute with half of the reductions we should be capable of doing in the coming 10 years. Why? Because the technology is available. Again, the investment, it's not that impossible anymore as it looked before. Therefore, again, it's just a matter of decision-taking process, okay? Next slide. The issue that this slide tries to show you is that, in fact, there is a technology, and I will come, because we are talking about water, I will come to the last 2 lines of this slide, where we have seawater desalination that we have mentioned already, was mentioned in the previous panel, and we have the wastewater reuse. Again, all the technology is there. Sometimes, and it was mentioned already during this meeting, is that in fact there is still a problem of a regulatory framework, which means defining the quality of water reuses, okay? I'm not going further, we do not have the time, but if someone wants to discuss it after, I can. Next one, please. Where I would like to lose a little bit of our time is to show you that, in fact, we have been discussing a lot about agriculture use, industrial use. This is worldwide. We can see that, in fact, the reused water has been more concentrated on industrial uses, but not in Europe. This is the fact of considering the Asia situation at the moment, because industry in Asia, especially in China, has more strict rules in what concerns with water usage. More strict rules than Europe itself. If we could take Asia out of this slide, in fact, we would see that in Europe still agriculture is the one driving the trend of water reuse, which means that we still have a way to go to improve and in fact, we'll look at as a positive side of it. We still have things to do, and we could accelerate. Okay, I believe it's the last slide. No, it's not. It's the beginning of the next 5 slides, where I would like to show you very quickly what has been done already, either in the industrial side and the urban side, in terms of water reusage. For instance, this is an example of Nestle. Everybody knows it, but it's a site in China whereby they are reusing the water taken from the dehydration process of the milk. So they are producing powder milk for babies and all those stuffs, and they are reusing that water that is lost that would be lost in that process. This is an example. If you go to the second one, it's totally different, but it's in Italy, and we are talking about a collaboration between the urban possibilities and the agriculture possibilities, which means that the city and the agriculture association discussed and came to the conclusion that this wastewater treatment could in fact be totally used for agricultural purposes. And this is an enormous wastewater treatment facility, and all the water, which means 100%, it's being reused for agricultural purposes. Next example. It's a different one. Again, it's a collaboration between the city and, in this case, the industry, which means that the wastewater treated, it's being used for industrial purposes. Okay, the next one. It's going a step forward, which means this is transforming, and this is in Windhoek. I don't know if everyone knows where it is. It's in Namibia. It's the capital of Namibia. And when I'm saying it's a step forward, it's because it's reusing a wastewater treatment facility for drinking, which means that we are transforming wastewater into potable water. And the last one, it's not an example in itself, it's just a technology just to show you, and coming to the salination issue. And I believe that was Mr. Roquette already mentioned that Portugal should be very concerned, or at least looking at the possibility of desalination as an opportunity, because we have the water very close to us. And this is just to show you how technology is evolving, because when we think about a desalination plant, we think about the huge investments, big areas to be covered, enormous energy needs. And in fact, it's not the case anymore. We are talking about very, I would say, sized kind of solution, very typical, I would say, almost like plug and play, and that could be increased as well as the needs. So this means that technology is available, investment is pretty much reduced. Therefore, and again, I would come to as I started. We are talking about water and climate change. Urgently, we need to address it, but we cannot use as excuses either not having the technology available, or because the investments are completely unbearable, that it's not the case anymore. We do not have excuses. It's just a matter of bringing, in fact, the decision on the table. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jose, for these so clear examples on how to use water more efficiently, and also to tell us that technology is there, solutions exist, so we just need Veolia to go on the path ahead. and now I would like to thank all the panel, Jose, Ricardo, Miguel, Rita. They were amazing presentations, and it was very nice to know the best practices you shared, and to know and to see your inspiring insights. And it's really curious how water is raising so many different challenges to such different industries, and how you are embracing them in such an enthusiastic and also innovative way. So now I have two quick questions. We are running out of time, so I will ask you to be brief. I'm sorry for that. And I have a first question for Rita and Miguel. If you look back some years on your industry, for the last years, what do you think evolved the most when we talk about water usage along the value chain? Maybe Rita?
I can let Miguel go first since I spoke first in the panel.
Perfect. Miguel?
Thank you very much. I believe that the biggest evolution is, for one side, it has been on the social awareness of, about water consumption and the way this contributes then to make better decisions at the business end. So we have many cases. I can give you an example with our retailer network and service network. We have a growing number of retailers that make investments in responsible water usage that go beyond regulations and legislation. It is a fact that Europe is not very strict in this regard, but we have a huge number of retailers that make investments in capturing the water from rainwater, store it, and use it, for instance, for washing vehicles, as an example. So this is actually, we monitor and measure this, and we have KPIs for this, and we are encouraging them to continue to make investments that go beyond legislation. But if it was not for the social awareness about the general aspects of conservation of the environment, I don't think that the progress would be as fast as it is now, because society is starting to filter and to make decisions of what they consume and they prefer, depending on how well companies do respect the environment. And this is clear in particular with the millennials and the younger generations, which are the consumers of the future. And I think this is a very positive trend.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much. Rita, do you want to have the word? I cannot.
I was trying to unmute myself and he said the host didn't allow me. But I couldn't agree more with Miguel Fonseca. I would highlight two things. One, going back to José Melo Bandeira presentation on, as we think about the cloud and as we transition to the cloud, we have more and more data centers. Data centers require water. One of the cooling ways of data centers is through water. So of course, throughout the last couple of years, there has been an increased usage of water to cool down the data centers, among other things. And at the same time, so I would say that is the big shifting turn, I would say, in the terms of the IT business. The second one is, I would quote Miguel also, is the awareness, right? We just did this big announcement in the beginning of this calendar year 2020, where we announced the carbon negative by 2030, the carbon, removing all the historical carbon emissions by 2050, the 1 billion climate innovation fund, the AI for Earth. So all these investments that we're doing and that were announced earlier this year is because of this awareness that Miguel was talking about, right? There was this transformation in the industry, and then followed was this awareness that we are part of the problem if we are not generating a solution, right? Mm-hmm. So towards this investment is how we're trying to give back to the planet, to eliminate our footprint, to eliminate our carbon footprint, and to rethink of the ways that we use water in our industry.
Thank you so much for sharing this with us. And for José and Ricardo, another question. Tell me one thing your company could be doing now that it's not yet implemented to deal with the issue of water scarcity. Maybe Ricardo, do you want to go first?
So on that point, I will bring up the topic about recycling, the full recycling cycle, let's say. Really trying to avoid using fresh water. I believe it is possible. I don't know it is completely 100% possible, but we'll get there. José says it's possible. I want to believe what he says. So we need to go from there. And I think this will be on our case. And if we try to educate others to do the same, we can have a major role in the world, and that's what we try to do.
Thank you so much. Jose, we cannot listen to you. Can you unmute? Because I can't. I don't know.
Yes.
Okay. Now it's
okay
working.
now? Well,
Yes.
I was trying to say that yes to Ricardo. We will have to do it, but I will probably go back to the issue that was raised by Mr. Bastos from Bial, because he was talking about what probably is a tremendous challenge in terms of technology. When we talk about ultra purified water, we are talking about enhancing the value of water. Okay, this is technology, it's available. When we are talking about reusing water, it's again the same principle. We are trying to clean the water as much as possible and making it usable either for agricultural purposes, either for washing, as was mentioned by the minister, but we are talking about making it possible to drink that water again. So we are closing the loop. This is what technology allows us today. We can then discuss if it's feasible in terms of, I would say, the economics of the issue, but again, it's a business plan to discuss. It's only economy. It's there. I don't know if Philippe Sanz is listening to us still, but that is the easy part to solve. Okay, difficult part to solve, it's to put all stakeholders on the table to discuss the issues, to find the solutions, and to implement them. What we are urging everybody, challenging everybody, is that there is ways to solve all those problems. We do not have excuses not to do it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And as Rita was telling us, if we are not part of the solution, we are part of the problem. You are showing us that you are part of the solution. Thank you for that. And I'm passing the word to Manon.
Thank you, Felipe, and thank you everyone that participated in this panel. This was the last panel of today. I would now like to ask a few more minutes of your time for the last poll, in which we addressed 2 questions. Great. Thank you all for voting. Well, as you can see in the results, they show that the conversation in the mix of the industry was most appreciated in this panel. And most of you as a consumer are very much concerned about the way that companies use water, or will be from now on. So I think that's a great great solution that we have from this from the panelists today. Then I would like to give the word to Nuno, back to Nuno, to close off the day with some final remarks.
Well, I'll be very brief. This has been a long afternoon, but I've learned a lot, and I'm sure everybody did. I know other than the people that were following us in here, we had a lot of people following us as well in Facebook. I hope to see everybody tomorrow again in the same place. I just want to sort of wrapping up, bring 2 or 3 of the most important things that I've heard today. I was really, I mean, Philippe Sanz is a great economist. I was impressed with when he said, I mean, if the value will rise, it will eventually become more expensive than diamonds, and something that I can see it with the challenges that we all have ahead of us. I remember from the minister when he mentioned the keyword, which is about adaptation, the concept that need to adapt the territory to the climate change scenarios, choices of cultures being a key element. And then we have Catalina, and it's not the first time I heard Catalina with all her energy and basically saying, we do have a problem. And I mean, this idea that in 2025, which is tomorrow, half of the population will be living in water-stressed areas, it's a real source of concern. She also said that it's no time anymore for business as usual, which is something that I saw in everything I heard in the rest of the afternoon, a trend from the corporation saying, yes, we also believe this is not business as usual. So we had two panels on sourcing and production. I really want to thank you very much and I'm going to name everybody. I mean, I want to really thank you. Obrigado to José Bastos, José Roquete, Tiago Costa, Rita Pissarra, Miguel Fonseca, Ricardo Silva, José Mel Bandeira, and also Sofia Cordeiro and Mário Macilau were great. So thank you very much for everything you said. So we have different industries, agriculture, pharmaceutical, IT, textiles, automotives, utilities. But at the end of the day, I think we can stay with four messages. At least that's my takeaway. First of all, water scarcity is undeniable. Second, business have a clear role to play. Not only I would add not only on this issue of water, but anything that has to do with being a responsible business. Partnerships are crucial. And I mean, Jose just finished by saying that, I mean, we know what to do it, let's work together. And I think for Católica, one of our SDGs, preferred SDG is the 17. So we probably have a role to play as well in terms to gathering all of these partnerships to solve all of these issues. And finally, the fourth message, which is time for action is now. So it was my takeaways. Tomorrow there'll be other takeaways. I just want to remind people that are listening to us now and that will be listening for the rest of the day if they follow them on the things that will be on the line, on our website. Tomorrow we have another fantastic keynote speaker, which is Leslie Porris from the water.org. It's an inspirational story, and Katarina already mentioned about that. We will have first-hand approach, a study that Gulbenkian Foundation just finished on a water study in Portugal. So Filipa Saldanha will be sharing with us that. We then have a panel with the Portuguese ecosystem, with Águas de Portugal, Water, and LNEC. We have another fantastic panel tomorrow with L'Oréal, Grupo Pestana, Pingo Doce, and Superboc. And last but not least, we'll have what we call disruptive innovation. So we are bringing together 6 different startups to tell us what are they doing in this amazing field which is called water and the challenge that we have in front of us. So thank you very much to all of you. Thanks for coming. Hope to see you tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you very much.